This is Sports Talk with Steve Jones, Seven Mountains Media Production, your daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball, featuring interviews with special guests. Now here's your host, Mr. Steve Jones.
Sounds impressive and dramatic. Who knows?
Oh, it's the most impressive thing you've ever heard.
Yeah, I'm kind of blown away by the whole thing. So let's discuss, as he checks out the camera angles.
Of course, we have to make sure the cameras look good.
Yeah, we have green lights to say they're on and a blue light, like if it moves with us. Okay.
Yeah, a little movement.
Let us discuss a topic that you will enjoy.
Oh, boy.
Relegation.
Relegation and promotion. Okay.
All right. That is a standard in Europe, and especially in England. Often we get to the end of a Premier League, and was it 4 teams get relegated?
The Premier League is the bottom 3 teams get relegated.
Bottom 3, gone.
Mm-hmm.
One of the great stories was that Leicester City had been relegated for years, won its way back in, and then won the title.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen here. I mean, relegation is, in this country, is I'm going to go to Division 1 AA. But I chose it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
No pro teams get relegated.
Does not exist here.
Right? If that were the case, the St. Louis Blues would have been relegated.
And the Charlotte Bobcats would be playing in college basketball.
And the St. Louis Blues would have been relegated in 2015-16. Instead, stayed together and won the Stanley Cup in 2019.
Do we believe the Cleveland Browns would have existed anymore?
Ooh. We're talking about the new version of the Browns, the 1999 Browns, not the previous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The new Browns with a million quarterbacks.
Yes, million quarterbacks, as opposed to the Baltimore Ravens, who were the Cleveland Browns before that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that has come up with all the realignment in college football. All right. I'll give my opinion about the whole thing in a little bit, but I think it's fair that you should put yours out there first, considering you have such a deep soccer background.
I do.
And why, on a pro or collegiate level, it would work.
So let's first discuss what it is, because I think some people in America think, oh, if you're the bottom team, you're out of the league and you don't play anymore. No. How it works, we'll take England as the main prime example here, is they have the English footballing pyramid. It is it's what it's all labeled as, because there are, I think, like 11, 12 tiers of football in England, and there's probably hundreds of leagues, and there's thousands of clubs, and it spans across Wales and England and everywhere. It's everywhere. So for them, they have the main 4 levels are what matters. You have the Premier League, the EFL Championship, EFL League 1, EFL League 2.
Right.
Those are the 4 leagues.
Yep.
EFL League 2 is where Wrexham now are. They're in the 4th tier of the English footballing league, which is considered professional. The top 4 are considered professional. The rest are all non-professional, non-league football. So every year, Premier League, of course, the top teams get to go to the best tournaments. Teams, 8 through, let's say, 17, all end up staying in the league, safe, middle of the pack. Teams 18, 19, and 20, finish-wise, relegated to EFL Championship number 1. So they go the league below that. It is a very big deal, because the other way, the reverse of that, is in the championship, they have 24 teams. Bottom 3, relegated, similarly like the Premier League. Top 3 get promoted. In that case, it's the top 2 teams get promoted automatically, and the last team comes from the next 4, do a playoff, and it's considered the most expensive game in the world. It's really cool.
Right.
But that's how it works. It provides not just entertainment, but it also provides a level of, I guess, clarity across the board that teams have to keep on trying to win. Right. Because we see it a lot in American professional sports, where you could look at San Antonio Spurs in this past season, for example.
Right.
Or even the Portland Trailblazers recently, where the back half of the season, you cannot name one player on that team because they're resting everybody. They're saying, oh, this guy picked up an ankle injury. No, he didn't. He's being rested. He is being saved. That is the truth of it. It's the ugly truth of the game. And you see it in every sport. You'll see it.
Right.
Take the past few years, the Pittsburgh Pirates. You kind of knew they weren't going to be great because you didn't know anyone on the teams. And it just kind of builds and builds, and they get the first pick in the draft. Right. That is what the American system has. The Europeans don't. No draft system. None of that. There is no positive thing for being garbage in a nice way. So this forces every team to compete, which is why in recent years you've seen the Premier League where these teams that are finishing 18th, 19th, 20th, take Leicester, for example, have these rosters that should be on par with a team that's 7th, 8th.
Right.
These teams are amazing. Leicester this past season, if you take all the players they have sold off since they got relegated to the championship, 200 million euros. Like a lot of money was poured into these teams because these teams still have to compete every day.
Right.
And it means that the entire season isn't just for a championship, it's also to not get relegated.
Right.
And the financial side of things.
In 200 years would be about $220 million. So
yeah. Well, the major thing is the money. That is the biggest player in this, is that in the Premier League, it is a cash cow. You are making a crazy amount of money from the TV deals and crazy amounts from player sales and tickets and all of that. Right. You don't see English teams have non-sellout crowds. They just, everything is close to a sellout every single game. Even the most expensive teams, everyone goes to them. In America, you see these stadiums half full. At baseball games, you see maybe 1,000 people at athletics games, but that's a different discussion. These
You're saying
teams,
the A's should be relegated.
The A's should be relegated. They should have been for a while. But these teams make a lot of money in the Premier League. The championship is maybe a 10th at most. They make a 10th of the money if they do amazingly. Right. That is why when the teams get promoted, they go from making, let's say, 20 million a year in terms of TV revenue to 200 something. Right. It is a major difference.
Yeah.
So it allows teams to make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of jumping around here because a lot of points involved in it.
Money is the key.
And you take a look at this season with Leicester getting relegated, a team that a few years ago won the entire gosh darn thing, played in the Champions League, the biggest competition in Europe, and relegated. And you take a look as well at a team that got promoted this year in Luton Town. Right. Luton Town, the smallest stadium, I believe, in the Premier League. They play at a place called Kenilworth Road, which you literally, to get to the stadium, to get into it, have to walk through people's apartment buildings. It is truly a sight to behold, and it shows that you can be there at Kenilworth Road one week and play at Wembley Stadium the next for a match if you needed to, or London Stadium where West Ham play. Right. The biggest stadium in the Prem. Right. Like a stadium used for the Olympics. You can go from that to people's apartment complexes and hearing someone cooking up some eggs while you're playing a soccer match. It's insane. But that's what promotion relegation does. It allows the big teams to be there, but you're not always safe. You have one off year, you can go down. And all of a sudden, it gets you into a real bad situation. Sure. There are a lot of clubs that have tanked because as soon as you lose that money revenue, everything goes off the wall. All of a sudden, players start leaving, which is what Leicester are facing right now. And alongside that, fans get mad, and that causes issues and change. And alongside all of this, it just becomes a cycle.
Was Nottingham Forest knocked down for a long time?
They were knocked down for a very long time. They just got back up this past season. Last year they were up, and they barely stayed in it.
Look at the look on his face. Like, he knows this.
No, I do. And Nottingham, similarly, a great European powerhouse, but they have been down. I know you know it. But teams like Nottingham Forest, Blackburn Rovers, Leeds United, teams that have had this crazy history. Yeah. When Leeds got back up 2 or 3 seasons ago, it was the biggest deal.
Sure.
Because they were a team with a huge
it's a
history.
celebration for the fans.
It's a celebration for fans. You get to compete in the highest level of the game. You get to see on a weekly basis the best players.
Right.
But it also means your team has to try and compete every year. You're not just going to get a team that goes out there and says, oh, we're going to try and fight for nothing. We don't really have anything to play for. No. Teams 13 through 20 this season, they're going to be competing for their lives every single week, which means the back half of that season, it is always the most entertaining. Not because of the title. We usually know who's going to win the title by game 32. We always usually kind of have an idea.
Man City.
Man City for most years. It just, At that point, or you know what two teams it is. And everyone else is kind of fighting for other spots, whatever.
Sure.
But the bottom part of that table, you see teams fighting for their lives. And then you get a matchup where it's a team that is fighting for their lives against a really big team that's trying to win a championship, but they're not taking it as seriously as they should yet. Right. And they lose to that team in the bottom. And for them, it is like winning the World Cup.
Sure.
Because it means so much to stay up. It does. Right. So it adds this extra level of enjoyment, excitement. It doesn't mean that midway through the season, by December, the Trailblazers are going to be like, oh, we're going to play Kyle F now at point guard instead of Damian Lillard. Right. No. Teams aren't going to do that. Luton's not going to do that. Nottingham Forest ain't going to do that.
Right.
It is so much more fun. And so, I know, 10-minute rant.
That's okay. We have an hour.
We have an hour. And you take this system to the U.S. side of things. It's been a very big thing. I made a whole college paper on this. I don't think you can make the system anymore in the collegiate and professional sports leagues in the U.S. because it's already been so ingrained and you can't
entrenched.
It's entrenched and you can't change it. But if it were to exist here, I think it would be much more beneficial for us to have the promotion relegation system than to have nothing.
So, all right, a lot to unpack.
Yes.
The bottom line is that in Europe and in England, the collegiate system doesn't really exist. That's one of the reasons why the Dream Team came into existence in '92. Essentially, the United States was sending collegiate players, amateur model, and we're competing against pros. I mean, all those teams that they were playing against had pro players because in Europe and other places around the world, they don't have the collegiate system of playing like we do. That level. It doesn't mean they don't have college sports. They do, but that's not how it works.
I believe a lot of the collegiate teams are in the football pyramid somewhere, if I'm not mistaken. It's just that for 4 years they have players play and they leave at some point, and it's just tough to stay.
Right.
Good.
And I think I pointed out to you the other day, Penn State, when they played in Ireland, and soccer is not the biggest sport in Ireland. In Ireland, it's Gaelic football, it's Irish hurling. Soccer might be third or fourth in Ireland, right? So I'm not going. So I'm just trying to give everybody some perspective about where it actually falls. But Penn State did practice on the soccer field at college at Dublin. It was all lined for football and so forth. And so I was talking to some of the students that were at the practices, and they go, "No, it's kind of." They acted like it was almost like club sports. Yeah, they competed against other people, but it wasn't a big deal, right, to them. Right. Now, Gaelic football, Irish hurling. In that country, that is, that's the deal. So just to give you some perspective on that. But in this country, we have the collegiate system, and actually, they would now go to the Olympics, and they would sort of be pros.
Yeah.
Okay. But because it's so entrenched, I think, as you pointed out, and correctly, it's so entrenched in this country that you play high school sports, and then you play college sports, and then you go to professional sports.
Mm-hmm. There's levels to it. You automatically go up.
Right. And, you know, in baseball, you can go from high school straight into the minor leagues if you wish. If you decide to go the collegiate route, you have to be there 3 years, and then you can re-enter the draft. College, in the NBA, you have to be out of high school for a year. You have to be 19 years of age and out of high school for a year. I'm not going to say one and done because there are certain players that have gone overseas. Hampton went over and played in New Zealand, Australia, whatever.
LaMelo Ball.
LaMelo Ball played in Europe as a couple of examples. And then there was the kid that was drafted from Australia that was the 5th overall pick by the Jazz.
Oh.
And then he ended up, you know,
Dante Exum.
Yeah,
he was French.
Washed out, but he played in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Played in Australia, didn't play in France.
Yeah.
Washed out, now is back in the league in Dante Exum. So those guys are all guys that did not go through the collegiate system, and that was their choice. Hampton was going to go to SMU. Right? And then said, I think I'll do this. I don't think LaMelo Ball had any. I mean, I think he had offers and decided he didn't even commit to anybody. Hampton actually verbally committed to SMU. And so you have to be out for a year and 19 years of age to get into the pro league. The NFL, you got to be 3 years out of high school. And nobody skips college.
No.
They may want to get out of college,
Yeah.
but then nobody skips it.
But
they play their 3 years. So the system is entrenched like that. And so there's no minor league or a secondary league to the NFL. Oh, sure, you got the spring leagues, whatever.
But it's not.
But it's not the same. Right? So it's you can't sit there and relegate the Chicago Bears, who had the 1st overall pick in the draft. You can't relegate them. Who do you relegate them for?
Yeah.
In Major League Baseball, you can't relegate the Oakland A's and have the Sacramento Riverhounds move up, or the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Riders,
Rocket City Trash Pandas,
move up. Scranton happens to be the Yankees farm team. Sacramento, I think Sacramento's actually the A's farm team, I think. But the system isn't in place to do that. Tanking is a huge problem. But what is also a huge problem to me is that you have a segment of the fan base that then about a third of the way through the season to almost half of the way through the season start encouraging their teams to tank. We want the first pick. Like, really? Right. Now, tanking is not done by the coaches or the players.
It's done by the owners,
by
the managers.
It's done by management. Like the movie Major League. Who are these guys? It's like, look, who are these guys?
By the way, Sacramento Rivercats are the Giants AAA team.
Giants AAA. No wonder they have a chance. Okay, but so the system's already in place, you know. And in college, in the Big Ten, guess which team they want to relegate?
Yeah. Does it rhyme with Smuckers?
Yes, it does.
Wow, it's so odd.
Yeah.
Does it happen to be in a state that no one really enjoys?
Yeah.
That's wow. I'm surprised.
But, you know, and we've had a form of relegation now take place in the past 2 weeks because at the moment, the Pac-12 is missing 2/3 of its schools. They'll all play this year.
But next year,
dicey, yeah. And what's happened is that Oregon and Washington, and we'll take them in particular because USC and UCLA were preemptive in this, and USC and UCLA automatically created more value for the TV contract when they did it. Oregon and Washington, the TV contract was already in place. They were just looking, hey, look, we need greener pastures. But what they did was, by making that move, especially Oregon and Washington. You can talk about Arizona, Colorado, Arizona State, Utah. When Oregon and Washington moved, that was the one that killed.
That was the end.
That was the end, right? They lost the two primary ones that they needed to keep. That's when they lost everything. And so that's a form of college relegation. But it's only a form. Nobody drops down.
No.
Nobody is, quote, forced to drop down. For example, UAB dropped football. Right? That was their choice. It was done at the presidential level, the whole deal. Cards, letters, emails, more cards, more emails, more letters, phone calls, things like that. They brought the program back after a year. Okay, come on, you can't do this, right? And that's why they're still alive. And now Trent Dilfer's their head coach. Clark, who was the coach there, hung in for the whole year and did a great job of bringing them back, to his credit. But there's because the system's already entrenched here, you can't really change it because there's no alternative in place. There's no Leicester City playing professionally, fighting its guts out as an independent organization.
Yeah.
The G League doesn't have independent organizations. Right. Minor league baseball, the A, double, and the high A, low A are all affiliated.
Yeah.
Right. But so you don't have that. So there's no place to go.
But let's say
up and down. As for the tanking part,
I was going to say tanking's the big issue in American sports.
Yes, it is, and I think it's a huge issue, and it's disgusting. Hey, I'm sorry. I am somebody who, to me, the heck with the odds, the heck with what Vegas says. I don't care. Okay. I know a lot of you watching, you may care. It's your money. You can do it. And if it gives you more enjoyment to do something like that or gives you more of an edge or a stake, perfectly fine. Me, no. To each his own, but me, no. I have no interest in it at all. To me, it is all about winning. And I don't care what the final score happens to be.
It should always be. There's why would you want to lose? Yeah, you get a better prospect, but
But they're a prospect. It's a fancy way of saying you haven't done it before. I
don't want to trust the process.
Okay. Well, no, let's talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. Okay. They treated their fans like garbage for years. Trust the process. And everybody's like, the process? You know what they got out of the process? But let's say it was about 5 years worth. One guy. They got Joel Embiid.
They missed on
Okafor can't play. Could not. Okafor can't defend you.
Yeah, he couldn't defend me if he tried.
He just had no interest in it. Wasn't good at it. Right? Markelle Fultz. Are you kidding me? I remember the Celtics had the first pick. I'm thinking, this is great. They should take Tatum. Right? I was doing the show at the time. I said the best player in the draft's Tatum.
Oh yeah.
I kept saying it, but just like it's easy now to say Manning was the best pick. The Colts wrestled back and forth between Ryan Leaf and Peyton Manning. Manning had a lousy pro day.
Yeah.
Leaf's coming off, Washington State, the Rose Bowl. Hey, look what he did. He can move, he can throw. It was a little closer than people realize going in when you're trying to make these guesses in hindsight. Like, how could you possibly think it was that close? But you have to put yourself in the moment, which a lot of people do a lousy job of doing. They do hindsight, but can't put themselves back in the moment. And it's the same thing with Fultz. Like in the moment, I was like, Tatum's the best player. Because I watched Fultz so I got to watch this guy if I have to talk about him. Because he's playing at Washington. So he'd be on late at night. So I watched the first game. I'm like, I don't get it. I thought, well, you know what? Next time they come up on TV, I'm going to watch them again. I said, at least watch a half, right? Because it's late at night.
Yeah.
So I watched them again. I looked at it, I said, I still don't get it. Then the third time I went to watch him, he was hurt and didn't play. Like, okay. Well, I'm like,
yeah.
Hey, now Tatum
was amazing.
Right? Was really, really good. Really good. And And so it was obvious. But then the Celtics dealt the pick, and they flipped with the Sixers. And I'm sitting there like going, they must be really sure that Fultz is going to be the first guy to make this move. And it turned out they were right.
Biggest win ever in draft history.
In other words, we can still get Tatum at 3.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they did. Well, they drafted Fultz. They drafted Ben Simmons. I watched Ben Simmons twice at LSU on TV. Each time, the exact same reaction I had with Fultz. I don't get it. I kept looking at him going, that's the first pick. And everybody's like, he's absolutely the first one. I'm sitting there going, okay, I watched him a couple times in the SEC. Okay, he can't shoot. This is a shooting league. He can't shoot. And I kept watching it. I said, yeah, he does some, he passes the ball pretty well. He uses his defense to translate to offense. That's really good. I said, but he can't shoot. I mean, like, it got to the point where he was open for a reason. And this is in college. And these are the guys they kept picking. And then they had to wait 2 years for him because of his foot injuries. And it's paid off huge. He's turned out to be a really good regular season player.
Keyword regular season.
He's been a really good regular season player. He's not been a playoff performer at all.
Imagine for a second, you have 7 lottery picks in this process era.
He got one guy.
One guy. You missed on Markelle. You missed on Ben Simmons. You missed on Jaleel Okafor. You missed on Nerlens Noel. You missed on Michael Carter-Williams and Dario Saric.
Wait.
A lot of whiffs.
None of them make sense. And then they in this whole process, they drafted Mikal Bridges. Went, this is great. When they made that pick, I said, that's a terrific pick.
And what'd they do?
They traded it that night for some kid from Texas Tech who can't play.
Who was that? Was that Zaire Smith?
Yeah, Zaire Smith. Can't play. And I said that when they made the trade, I thought, what are they doing?
They would love to have Mikal Bridges right now.
Of course they would. But when they drafted him that night, I thought, well, that's a really savvy pick. I remember saying, well, that's a really savvy pick. And then 20 minutes later, like, it went from savvy pick to, you're really a bunch of idiots. I couldn't believe it. And, okay? So tanking, okay? There has to be a personnel group that has the ability to evaluate talent to make it pay off. When you don't, you have a mess. And you're just backhanding you have to, in other words, try. All the time.
Try.
All the time.
That's all we ask.
Feel like you're giving your fans your best. And putting a losing team on the floor is not doing that. At one point, the Sixers, during the process, everyone talks about the cap all the time. The cap. How far are they from the cap? Are they over the cap? Whatever. But people don't realize, okay, and this is why the Major League Baseball Players Association has always resisted a cap. Right? Because with every cap, there's a floor.
No one wants to.
And the Sixers fell below the floor.
So did one other team, the Thunder, I believe, last year or 2 seasons ago, fell below the floor. And what they have to do, you have to really pay your way. Like, the rest of it, the money you have left, goes to players in a check at the end of the season. They each got like $1 million, the Thunder. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, $1 million check just because the Thunder didn't pay enough. And now they changed in the CBA, so you got to pay at least 90% so you won't fall below that floor.
Right, exactly.
But
that's where they were. So that is the issue with tanking right there. Right? It's one thing to sit there and go, we're tanking. How about the Dolphins? We're going to tank to get Tua.
Tanking for Tua.
Well,
winless for Wiggins.
Well, guess what? Brian Flores and the players didn't go along with it. Right? Nor should they. They looked over and go, my job's to coach the team. The players are like, our job's to win as many games as possible. Because guess what? You're fighting for your job.
Yeah.
I'm fighting for my job. I've got 5 games to go in the season. Everybody's like, tank what? I need to be playing next year. I need to be getting that check. So you better believe the coaches and the players are fighting their guts out. They are not tanking. It's management that's tanking. And then Then I always love with the fans. They can't even tank right. Like, oh, for goodness sakes.
I think the big crux here is, as we've kind of discussed within this promotion relegation discussion, is that because the system is so entrenched, you can't change now. You're
right.
too far gone.
That's right.
But
just like you couldn't change the system in England.
Yeah.
You could not.
You can't.
It's
you can't flip it. But let's say hypothetically.
And the fans are invested in how the English system is, and the fans are invested in the U.S. system.
Well, the big point that happened, I believe it was 2021, is the Super League.
Yes.
This was, as someone who was a very big soccer fan, still is, and like I follow this thing religiously, and I have a podcast on it. We recorded a special episode when the Super League was announced. It was announced in the U.S. at like midnight. Midnight in the U.S.
It's probably on a Friday.
It was I believe a Tuesday. It came out.
Yeah, it was
a Tuesday at like 11 midnight, and it came out because the head of it, Florentino Perez, who's Real Madrid's guy, announced it, and everyone in the UK was asleep still. They weren't awake yet, and then we weren't awake yet, and within 48 hours, the entire league was disbanded. Couldn't do it anymore. Do you know why?
The fans killed it.
Fans said, heck no, we don't want that system here. Because what they wanted was 12 teams to always be in this league, and the rest of them could come up and down and such, but the 12 teams would stay still.
Yeah.
And fans were like, no. Fans of the clubs were like, no, we don't want this.
That's right.
Because it makes sense they didn't want it. But overall, if you have a choice right now, leagues are completely disbanded. All of these teams in the U.S. are on their own. So let's go with the Spikes, for instance. The State College Spikes, maybe 10 minutes away from us, are a part of the baseballing pyramid. And you get to pick between a promotion relegation system or the system we have now to an extent. What are you picking?
Well, I think I'm so used to the system we have now. That's, the key for the Spikes will be to get to be affiliated, which they are working hard to get to. Because then what happens is that, and you experience this in Syracuse, because they're part of the Toronto Blue Jays system, and so was Auburn. You get to a point where you're looking out and like, oh, there's Lars Nootbaar. He played here. Right? There's Austin Gomber with the Colorado Rockies. In fact, I was in the car last night leaving practice from Beaver Stadium, and they were talking about it. And Austin Gomber will be starting tonight. I'm going right by Medler Field when the guy in the air said it. I thought, hey, great. It's like Gomber pitched there. Right? And there's that element to it.
Yeah.
So, and you have to here's the other part, Kyle, that's really important. To be in professional sports at the highest level, you have to have a market to support it. So you can't have, outside of Green Bay, for example, you can't have a market that size with a professional sports team. I'm talking at the highest level, NHL, NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball. So market size dictates. For example, Portland sounds like a terrific, good-sized market. But that's, right now, they're grappling with the size of the market compared to what everybody else look at. Nashville is a growth opportunity. So market size plays a role in it, as opposed to in England, you have a lot that are around London.
Yeah, a lot in around London, a lot around Manchester.
Right.
It's there's certain locations.
Liverpool, you've got a lot around certain areas. They're not. So it's a smaller country. This is a huge country with a lot of big markets, and you can't. It's very difficult to sit there and have a medium-sized market. I'm not going to say smaller market. I'll say a medium-sized market and compete. Jacksonville is struggling, even with the Jags, and they've got a fun, exciting team. They still play a game over in England every year.
One, they playing 2 this year.
Yeah, 2 this year. I think because they have 9 home games this year. I think. And I mean, that tells you a lot. Market size in a country of this size does play a role as to where you need to have franchises.
See, I look at let's start with the player part. You mentioned players and seeing them play and things. There's my favorite example of like players and like where they were was Jamie Vardy, a player for Leicester.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was a part of the academy system at Sheffield Wednesday, another club that's been in and around the Premier League before.
Sure.
A good team. They let him go in 2003.
Yeah.
He then signed for Stocksbridge Park Steels Football Club. They are currently in the North Premier League Division 1 East, which I think is like 6th tier, 7th tier, something like that. Mm-hmm. They're not close to Premier League status. Right. He played for them until 2010, signed for FC Halifax Town, then Fleetwood Town, and then Leicester. Boom, 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 straight shot up to Leicester. Mm-hmm. The players at Fleetwood are going to be able to be like, I played with him when he was great. Mm-hmm. Harry Kane, another great player in England, played at low levels. They get loaned out. They play in different places. You can say later in life, I played with that guy in this tiny stadium of 1,000-seater. Like, it's such a cool dynamic. And if I were to take the promotion relegation system, bring it here, I think it could work. I think you would have to split up regionally where teams are. Maybe it's an east of the Mississippi, west of the Mississippi deal, something of that variety. Yeah. Because, as you said, the country is gigantic. But for me, that helps it, is that it's so big. You have so many cities. For me, I grew up in Connecticut. Give me a team in Hartford. We have a Hartford Athletic. They're a USL team. Yeah. I want them in the top leagues. Maybe you make it, of course, if it's starting from scratch, maybe it's all the teams in the East Mississippi and all the teams in the West are each a part of two different leagues, and then you have a big competition, tournament style every season, Champions League-ish.
This would be something like, okay, so let's take the idea of not relegation, but how do you get the first pick? Mm-hmm. And give it a little juice. Who's to say that when the playoffs begin in Major League Baseball, 14 teams make it? Mm-hmm. So 16 don't. You play a series of one-game playoffs among the 16, and the winner of it gets the first pick.
Would work for me.
Okay? The NBA, okay? You have, 20 that make it, 10 don't? The 10 that don't make it, instead of ping pong balls, the winner, you put them in a tournament. Mm-hmm. Okay? One game, right?
Yeah.
The winner of it gets the first overall pick. The loser gets the second overall pick. Okay? The team that lost, the team that ended up going 0-5 gets the 10th pick.
Yeah.
Right? Incentive to win. Okay?
It would make it so much better.
It actually would be a tournament. I think people would people would actually watch some of it.
Yeah.
To say, oh, especially the one where who's going to get the first overall pick. And like your town's rooting like crazy. Hey, this is great. We have a chance at the first pick in the draft. Mm-hmm. Right? The NFL, could you do that? The NFL doesn't have a problem with tanking.
Yeah, the NFL doesn't. The NFL is also, I think, the toughest sport for it to work because of just the size.
The pure physicality of it.
The physicality and also the size of the teams. There's too many players. It's too tough to
I've also never heard of an NFL team actually tanking and management tanking.
Cleveland. Sorry.
Nah, they just aren't good. I mean, it's not like they've tanked to get the first pick. I mean, they're just not good.
Yeah.
And injuries happen. There's a lot of circumstances that get built into why it happens. But when you see teams in the NBA openly, and they're saying, how do we solve this? And we're going to do ping pong balls and things like that. Hey, why don't you just play? Mm-hmm. Okay? And the one that wins the darn little mini tournament you have
gets it.
Right? Gets it.
Yeah.
Right? And it may be the team that finished with the 6th worst record. But, nothing elongated, like one game, do it like that. And the team that has the worst record in the whole group, when it's all said and done, gets to pick 10th. Well, guess what? Okay? Now, What are you thinking? We can't tank. We might get the 10th pick and never get out of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually somebody would televise it. Back to the next TV contract, you make ESPN do it. You know, let's face it, afternoon games, why not? Right? Afternoon, why not? Why not play in the afternoon? You don't have to put it in prime time.
Yeah.
You don't have to put it in prime time, right? Until you get to the last one. When you get to the last one, which is for the first overall pick in the draft, you do put that in prime time. Everybody goes, son of a gun, that's pretty good.
And for me, I look at, like, there's a really cool thing that happens because, of course, every team in Europe, they have academies. So they have these U11s, U13s, U15s, U23s up to that point. And they play in these different competitions and all of it.
I think we have IMG, right?
We have IMG and all of these academies and stuff.
Yeah.
But in Spain, the two teams I look at, Real Madrid and Barcelona, two of the biggest teams globally. That's what it is. They're two of the biggest teams in the world. They each have Barca B and Real Madrid B. They have this basically second teams, essentially.
Yeah.
These teams also compete in the pyramid. They're both in the newly formed third division of Spanish football, similar to what the English pyramid has. They're there. They're in the third tier. Of course, Real Madrid can kind of call up players as they pick, so it hurts their chances. But realistically, they could get promoted to the second division and to the first division. Sure. Would it happen? No, because Real Madrid at that point would be like, no, we're taking all these guys and we're going to sell them. But that's a moot point. The big thing is they have these teams. So in baseball, let's say every team that is an affiliate and all the pro teams and all these things get mixed into a pyramid system. And as soon as you leave high school, you can sign wherever you want to, any level. Of course, some players will be like, okay, I'm going to get signed by the New York Yankees. Let's say Jackson Holiday got signed by the Baltimore Orioles. Immediately starts out in a good location, but he might know that he's not going to play. So they can loan him out to the Spikes.
Yeah.
Say, okay, you pay us a certain amount, but he's going to play for you. He's going to help you for a year. That's what they have in England, is the promotion, relegation, the loan system, all of it. It works really well. And if you were to take these teams, put them everywhere, maybe the Yankees make a Yankees B team, and they have to start out at the bottom of the pyramid, and all of these youth guys, and they go up.
So in football, you'd relegate Rutgers and bring up Tulane.
Yeah. Let's say that happens. Let's say you relegate Rutgers, bring up Tulane. Or if it's college basketball, you relegate Georgia Tech and bring up Houston or UConn into the ACC.
Take my word. I'm pretty sure the name of Rutgers has come up so many times in the past year with schools thinking about where they wanted to go. I remember saying distinctly 2 years ago, this is after Texas and Oklahoma went, I said, look, if I'm USC, because I was talking about USC, Big Ten, almost right away. Nah, again, because I thought it made, like, hey, look, go big. I remember I said, go big. I said, if you're Mike Bowen, the athletic director at USC, he was the athletic director at the time, I said, I'm in my meetings looking around saying, Rutgers is getting this and we're getting this? And that, I'll bet that came up so often where people use them or Vanderbilt. Okay?
Either way.
Right? Saying they get that and we get this. We're one of the top brands in college football. And Rutgers, now Rutgers isn't, they're so far behind financially. They're actually not getting full checks yet because they're trying to pay back all the loans from the advanced borrowing they took from the Big Ten. But I bet that came up a lot where people said, oh, whoa, why does Rutgers get this? I mean, you don't think Washington and Oregon are sitting there going, oh, Rutgers gets this? Right. Yeah. But they're in the club. They're in the club.
Yeah. And that can happen in the Premier League. That is my favorite thing, is seeing these clubs that you're like, who are you? Like Leicester a few years ago. Yeah. I didn't know who they were in 2016. I had no idea. All of a sudden, they win the league. They beat out Arsenal. They beat out Tottenham, Manchester United, Manchester City.
I actually watched the last two they played.
It was a great season.
Leicester lost the one. They lost to Arsenal. I remember that game so vividly. Yeah.
Being like, oh my gosh, we could possibly win the entire thing as an Arsenal fan.
Right.
But then for Leicester to go and win it, and just like, I have rewatched that season. There's highlights everywhere on YouTube of like watching through the whole season and the story. It is one of my favorite things, because this team realistically should not be there. They knew they shouldn't be there.
Right.
Jamie Vardy, Riyad Mahrez, N'Golo Kante, these three players had all played in the lowest levels. Kante was in the 7th division of France.
Sure.
And then 2 years later, he's playing for Leicester in the Premier League. Riyad Mahrez, similarly. 3rd tier of France or 2nd tier of France, makes it here. Jamie Vardy, exact same thing.
Right.
These guys who realistically, no one was going to give a shot. They made it there. And then all of a sudden they became the best. And then Riyad Mahrez and N'Golo Kante became two of the best players in the Prem. Same with Jamie Vardy. They got there because they worked their butts off, their keisters off.
Right.
And there are so many other teams that aren't doing that aren't trying to find the talent out there. They're willing to lose in the US just to get a top pick to go get a talent.
Right.
But in the promotion relegation system, you have to go find it constantly.
Right.
There are crazy scouting networks out there, and the best head scouts become part of management. And then they get to set up their own scouting network to set things. You look for certain players and certain people and all of this. And it's gigantic. It is such a good system. And yes, you can have offshoot leagues like the Champions League, where it's the best of the best play. And I like that. It's really good. You needed to have it happen because we always want to see the best go up against one another.
So you think the Pirates should be relegated?
They should have been gone along. The Pirates should have been gone a while ago. The Athletics should have been down decades. There's a bunch of teams.
The Athletics have been in the playoffs. It's not like they haven't. But this is a bad team.
Yeah. And even this season, the Leicester City play at the King Power Stadium. That is their home ground. It has a seating capacity of 32,000. That is their record capacity, 32,000 people.
Right.
It's a pretty decent sized stadium, I think you'd say. And they're playing in the 2nd tier. Give you a ballpark here. The Stadium of Light, which is the home of Sunderland, who just got promoted, I believe, to the 2nd division. It is one of the biggest stadiums in England. It's the 9th biggest, 49,000 people. And they're playing in the 2nd or 3rd tier of English football.
Right.
You can have big teams in big stadiums lower down. It works.
Right.
And then as you go up, you can get a team like a Luton Town where they have Kenilworth Road, this road where you literally have to walk through apartments to get to the stadium. It is one of the most amazing things. You haven't seen it, like Google it, because it truly looks insane where you're like, oh, the best players in the world, the Erling Haalands of the world, have to walk through there to go and play a match. You're like, that can't be right.
Right.
It's right. So it can work. You can have these stadiums because, of course, when teams get to the top, they'll build bigger ones.
Right.
They'll slowly increase the size of them to kind of match where they need to be. Luton added some seats to their stadium this season. They made it a little bit nicer, a little bit bigger. You can do that with teams. All these stadiums you have, Altoona, their stadium, it could work for a baseball stadium. You could easily build a little bit extra on there, a little seating. Every year you get to the top, a little extra, and then bam, it's an actual stadium. And then maybe if you're a great team, bigger one, maybe. But you can make this work. You can totally make it work. You make it happen, and it would provide people in Altoona. Let's say they become a part of the premier MLB division, whatever you want to call it. Let's say they become a part of the top league, and they all of a sudden are there. There's going to be the best players in the world in the MLB coming to play. And all of a sudden, all of these different fans in Altoona are going to be like, yeah, I want to go watch this game. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Of course, I think the only, outside of the MLS and soccer, because that's a different animal.
Yeah.
The only place I think this could work would be baseball and basketball. Right. Only two sports I think could make it work. Baseball, the schedule is gigantic, so it's tough. Soccer, they play for 8 months or 9 months, and they have what, 40 games at most. The championship is 42 games, I think.
Right.
So they play X amount of games. They play 46 in the championship. Mm-hmm. So it's less games. It's once a week or twice a week at most. So it's tougher to do at the MLB where you're playing dozens of games. NBA could definitely make it happen. Basketball, it could so totally work. Just it's team size, players, all of it. That could work. Baseball, you could make it work. You could find a way to get there. Maybe less games. Maybe you change it up a little bit. I don't know. That's a discussion for another day.
I've talked about less games for a long time. That the NBA should be playing 60. The NHL should be playing 60. Mm-hmm. Major League Baseball should be playing 130.
Yeah. But that's the thing. You can make it work.
But they can't do it because they are now so dependent. Mm-hmm. If I play 130 Major League Baseball games,
you're losing.
I am now losing out on 16 home dates. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I can't afford to lose out on 16 home dates. My top hitter who's hitting 282 and misses about a third of the season, I'm paying $40 million.
Ow. It's almost like you're using a specific example here, Steve.
I am.
That's interesting.
I can use the second highest paid player.
Nah, that's okay. You don't have to.
He's hitting 202.
Ow. Ouch.
They had 4 hits last night.
Yeah, I know. Not great. But the point of if you were starting from scratch completely, everything from scratch.
Oh, from scratch.
I'm taking promotion relegation over the U.S. system of set leagues, set things, because that promotes teams to not have to be great and have this level of safety. Yeah. In the Premier League, Leicester went from literally winning the title. I put them last year in my predictions for the season, 7th or 6th, a team that was going to get European conference football, going to a big competition. They got relegated. Right. They went down. They're playing against teams that respectfully are not good.
Well, 10 years ago, the topic of tanking never came up.
No.
In this country. It never came up. So it wasn't even a thought. And not only that, but relegation wasn't a thought because the Premier League had not caught on in this country. Now the Premier League has caught on in this country. Be like, hey, how about relegation? It's it's not going to work here. Just not going to work. Mm-hmm. The system is so entrenched. And the attendance because you're talking about it, you're talking about relegation in a sport. Right? This is a country of lots of sports.
At least 4 or 5 sports.
That then has college components. Now we're up to 6. Yeah. Assembly Hall in Bloomington is getting 17,000 people coming in for a basketball game. Right? Yeah. Penn State's going to get 110,000 when they play this year. Right? And those are 2 schools that, for example, are not in the professional ranks and are in small towns, Bloomington and State College, respectively. So you already have it entrenched. It's not a question of, wow, the Pacers are bad, but maybe we'll relegate them and Indiana basketball will now play in the NBA. Now, that would delight the fans of Bloomington.
Oh, yeah.
And not only that, their arena is only about 1,000 less than Indianapolis. But again, you need the population base to do it. I mean, they obviously they sell out down there anyway. It doesn't matter. But even when they're bad, they get great crowds. I remember going in there, and it was in the late 2000s, and they were really bad. And they still drew 15,000. I give them credit. But market size means a lot in this country. Because you have to be able to support a long-term. Premier League is 38 matches. Now, there are other things, UEFA champions and things like that. I got that part. But you have 38 matches. Okay, that means you're home 19 times. Well, Penn State in basketball plays at home 20 times in a 30-some-odd game, 32-game season. Okay. But in the pros, they don't. Yeah, you mentioned the Spurs. Well, they play 41 home games. They don't play 19. You have to have a market that can sustain that. The Yankees are playing 81 home games. Right? Same thing. Let's take the A's. You've got 81 games. They're going to go to Las Vegas because they feel they can sustain it better in Las Vegas than they can in Oakland right now, attendance-wise. Pittsburgh has 81 home games. They don't have 19. So there's more, there's more you need to sustain in the model in this country as opposed to what you need to sustain in England, where you're like, hey, we're home 19 times. Let's go watch Arsenal play. Right? The NFL, of course, same story here. But you notice what's happened. I've talked about this many times. You've seen a downsizing, not an expansion of stadium size. Downsizing. That's why SoFi surprised me as to how big they built it. But Buffalo, Ralph Wilson Stadium was 80,000 seats at one point. Now they've downsized it. It's up in the upper 60s now. The new place, Highmark, is going to be 65,000. Right? With lots of luxury suites and so forth, revenue. But they're trying to make it because of television, right? A more intimate setting. And you're seeing more places downsize. Major League Baseball. I mean, Pittsburgh, Three River Stadium, they could put 65,000 people in there, but they built PNC Park's 38,000 seats. It's the right size.
Yeah.
Right? So you're seeing more downsizing in stadiums here, not expansion on stadiums. Very rare do I see a stadium built like, holy crap, look at that. Right? Most of them are getting, because, and that's back to Rutgers for a moment. That one of Rutgers' problems revenue-wise, and this is their fault. They needed to build, but they don't have the money to do it. They're broke. They needed to build luxury suites there. Rutgers doesn't have luxury suites. They have none. Zero. And if there's any place on the face of the earth that you want to be inside for,
it's Jersey.
It's like,
that I can agree with.
You know what? It's warm in here. This is good. November. Michigan's here. Great. Yay. Right. So it's two completely different systems. Both systems in the respective parts of the world are entrenched. And one of the reasons that it's entrenched in this country is the fact that you have that middle level that is so popular and so entrenched that actually began before the professional leagues were formed. College football was there before the NFL.
Yeah.
College basketball was there before the NBA. And so that middle level has been far deeper entrenched than the pro level. And that's why you can't do the system here.
No, you cannot. But
it's a fun topic, though.
It's a very fun topic to discuss. And you surprised me with that one. I was expecting something different today. Pros from relegation, sign me up for discussing it more.
Wow. I mean, I don't know what anybody wanted us to talk about today. You want Pirates? No.
Yeah. I would much rather discuss Le Havre and Riyad Mahrez and random players that I know exactly where they came from.
Steelers' second preseason game?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that matters. That matters a lot, Steve, okay?
All right.
Matters a lot.
Roster spots 30 through 46? Yes.
After that,
I mean, somebody asked me, what did you think of the first Steeler preseason game? I said, didn't see it. What about the Eagles? I didn't see it. In fact, that was opposite the open scrimmage on Saturday night. There was a guy sitting there that was covering it, had an Eagles T-shirt on, and he was looking at his phone. And I said, tell me you're not keeping up on the Eagles game. And he says, yeah. I said, why? I said, why do you care what Ian Book does?
hey, don't hate on Ian Book, former New Orleans Saint. But what I will also say is I happened to be in a bar and saw Sean Clifford's touchdown. So
now I did watch a quarter of that game because he played.
Yeah, I happened to be somewhere. Right. The game was on.
Now, I did watch a quarter of that because he played. I mean, I'm always interested in what the Penn State guys are doing because I'm trying to see how many they can, especially, they're not in a Micah Parsons, Saquon Barkley part. Like, are they going to make the team?
But all not bad. But overall, of course, thank you for tuning in.
The Kyle Show.
Oh, that made my day, Steve. Thank you, sir.
The Kyle Show.
And of course, thank you for tuning in to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a Seven Mountains Media production. Check back daily for all the latest sports news and analysis. The voice of Penn State football.